First of all, let me say it was very hard to find somebody to actually come on my program and to defend Congressman Akin. And I got to tell you, I'm on board with you. I mean, I think there is a huge overreaction on both sides, the left and the right, and it shows the double standard that we have. If anybody on the right misspeaks it in a way that offends or supposedly offends, because I think a lot of the offense is being feigned for political gain. But if you offend somebody who is one of these protected groups, there's so much outrage. But if someone on the left does it, they get a pass. But if someone on the right does it, it's, oh my God, this is, the guy's got to drop out. And, I think they've totally overreacted. I want to play the clip that got Akin in so much trouble in an interview over how a congressman would handle a rape. He's pro-life, as many people are. Some believe that there should be exceptions for rape. Some don't. And he's talking about that. And he talks about the fact that he believes that, it's very rare anyway, that it's not like there's that many pregnancies as a result of rape. And of course, he's thinking in his mind about what we traditionally would call rape, which is a violent act where somebody is violently raped against their will. That's what he's thinking about. He's not thinking about the broader definition of rape today that includes, just having too much to drink and then saying that, therefore you didn't give your consent. He's not talking about that. He's talking about the type of rape that we generally would consider for an exception if you are pro-life. So here is the sound.
So if an abortion could be considered in a case of, say, a tubal pregnancy or something like that, what about in the case of rape? Should it be legal or not?
Well, people always want to try and make that as one of those things. Well, how do you slice this particularly tough sort of ethical question? It seems to me, first of all, from what I understand from doctors, that's really rare. If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down. But let's assume that maybe that didn't work or something. I think there should be some punishment, but the punishment ought to be in the rapist and not attacking the child.
All right, well, that's it. How is that so outrageous?
Well, I agree with everything that Todd Akin said in that comment. When he used the term legitimate, Peter, if you look that word up in the dictionary, it means authentic or genuine. So what he meant by that, and he makes that clear, he's talking about forcible rape or assault rape, and he's distinguishing it, say, from consensual sex, where one of the partners wakes up the next day and decides they didn't like what happened the night before, and then they want to call it rape, where it was consensual. What Todd Akin was talking about is when a woman is forcibly raped, it's assault rape. That's what he was talking about there. And
it's obvious that's what he... It's obvious that that's what he was talking about because he's referring to the trauma. And I don't know whether he's right or wrong about that, but clearly if a woman is going through a rape, which is probably one of the worst experiences near being murdered that you're going to go through as a woman, in that environment, inside the body, the way the body reacts, the stress, the trauma, does that condition make it harder to conceive? And I don't know whether it does or it doesn't, but clearly that's what he's referring to.
Well, and Representative Akin never said that conception's impossible in cases of rape. He just said it is rare. If a couple goes to a fertility specialist, one of the first questions that fertility specialist was going to ask them, are you experiencing an unusual amount of stress in your life? Because they know that stress, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, can interfere with the process of conception. So once again, Todd Akin was exactly right. And his point was we can be grateful that conception in cases of rape is rare because that creates a very difficult and challenging moral situation. I believe that it's a baby in the womb. We do not want to put children to death for the sins of the father in America, in which case Todd Akin is exactly right, which is the position, by the way, that Mitt Romney took in 2007.
But here is the controversy. Because he decided to use the word legitimate to describe a traditional or a violent rape, to differentiate it from the new definition, which includes all sorts of things. In Connecticut, apparently, if a husband can be charged with raping his wife if the wife was drunk during the time they had sex. So it's a very broad definition now. And I'm not saying that it's right to take advantage of a woman who's had too much to drink, but I don't equate the two. Just like, the president came out and said rape is rape. Well, I don't think rape is rape any more than I think murder is murder. We have first-degree murder, we have second-degree murder, and I don't think a violent rape where somebody just attacks you, assaults you, and forces you to have sex, I don't put that in the exact same category as a guy who might take advantage of a woman who had too much to drink on a date. I mean, they're both wrong, but they're not equivalent.
Well, the reality is that if Todd Akin had used the word forcible or assault rape, we wouldn't even be having this conversation today. That's clearly what he meant. There's not a living soul, Peter, in the state of Missouri that sincerely believes that Todd Akin supports or defends any form of rape whatsoever. Everybody understands what he meant. So you're right, this is sort of gotcha politics. And, you know, it's a disturbing lesson in loyalty to me on the part of the Republican Party, because you look at Joe Biden, who has been a serial gaffe machine since 1988, and the Democratic Party is still standing behind him. Todd Akin makes a poor choice of words one time, and the Republican Party wants to throw him under the train.
And here's even more ironic about it, or not, I don't even, irony is even the best word, but you look at Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan signed on to a bill, right, that where they differentiated between forcible rape and date rape, or whatever you want to call it, where they were going to make an exception for abortion under the circumstance of a forcible rape. And anybody who is pro-life, like if you look at Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney has claimed that he is pro-life, but he will make an exception for rape. I would like to ask Mitt Romney, does that include all kinds of rape or forcible rape?
Well, you go back to 2007, Mitt Romney, in the debates, presidential debates in 2007, said he would happily sign a bill that would ban abortions under all circumstances, including whatever kind of rape was involved. And again, you know, I believe that's the pro-life position. We don't punish the child, the innocent unborn child, for the sins of the father. Mitt Romney,
right? But here,
so he's gone etch-a-sketch on the pro-life.
I know, but now he's saying that he would support abortion in the case of rape. I would love to ask Mitt Romney, is that all rape? Because if you're going to expand that, then you're pro-choice. Because any woman, let's assume that abortion was illegal, that Romney was able to sign a bill and made abortion illegal. But if all you have to do is claim that you were raped and then you can get an abortion, well, then anybody who wants an abortion is just going to say they were raped. And if you're not going to differentiate between the two, if any woman can say, look, I had too much to drink and now I'm pregnant, so I want an abortion because it was rape, because I didn't give my consent, then everybody is going to be able to claim they were raped so they can have an abortion.
Well, see, that was exactly Representative Akin's point. That's what he meant by legitimate, where you have a genuine case of forcible assault rape where a woman is being forcibly, physically, sexually assaulted against her will. She had no consent, no part in it. It's not because she drank too much. It's not because she had consensual sex and then changed her mind. It's a genuine case of forcible rape.
Yeah, well, although I'm not saying date rape isn't legitimate. I'm just saying that you have to differentiate between that form of rape and a violent rape. Otherwise, your exception for rape is meaningless, because any woman, and I know the feminists are going to come out and say no woman would ever lie about being raped. Sure they would, especially if it was the only way to get an abortion. I mean, if I was a young girl and I got pregnant, and and the only way I could get an abortion, if that's what I wanted, if the only way I can get an abortion was to claim I was raped, then I'm going to claim I was raped. I mean, what else? I mean, and of course, it has nothing to do with proof, because you can't wait for a trial to determine whether or not the woman's claim of rape is legitimate or not, because then the baby, you have to have the abortion right away. So if you're going to make an exception for rape, how can you not say it's only violent rape? Because otherwise, you've defeated the whole purpose of being pro-life.
Well, and that's exactly the point that Representative Akin was making. He is sincerely pro-life. He believes that life in the womb is sacred. It's a forming baby. It is a baby. It's a human life. We should not take it, regardless of the circumstances under which it was conceived. That's what he was saying yesterday, and it's a shame that the Republican Party has tossed him overboard for a poor choice.
I mean, is it? I know, wouldn't all, but the big thing is they're trying to say that all rapes are the same, that there's no such thing as a legitimate rape, or that rape is rape, whether it's date rape, statutory rape, violent rape, that they're all identical, they're all equally as bad, and that you have to treat them all the same, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any pro-life people, and I'm not even pro-life, I'm pro-choice, but I don't think there's anybody who's pro-life who believes in an exception for rape, who doesn't differentiate between the type of rape. Would that be correct?
Well, absolutely. You know, one other angle of this, Peter, is the real scandal here on the rape scene is what Planned Parenthood has been doing, because they have been covering up statutory rape where adult males will take advantage of impressionable young girls at age 13 and 14. The girl becomes pregnant. She goes into the Planned Parenthood clinic. They have a statutory obligation to report that because that's statutory rape. That's a crime. 95% of the Planned Parenthood clinics in America cover that up. That's the real scandal when it comes to the issue of rape and abortion.
Oh yeah, but to me though, this, the double standard here. If I'm sure that if any Democrat had made that point, even if it was a pro-life Democrat, and there are pro-life Democrats, it's not strictly a Republican issue, although certainly you probably find more pro-lifers in the Republican Party, but there are some in the Democratic Party. I'm sure if a liberal Democrat, had used the exact same words, nobody would even care. Brian, I've actually got some sound I want to play from President Obama's reaction to that. I don't know if he actually called his own press conference just about it or just happened to chime in. But take a listen to what the president had to say.
Let me first of all say the views expressed were offensive. Rape is rape. And the idea that we should be parsing and qualifying and slicing what types of rape we're talking about doesn't make sense to the American people, and certainly doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, so the president again says rape is rape. There's no difference. We shouldn't differentiate between any form of rape. It's okay to differentiate between forms of murder, right? We have first-degree murder, second-degree murder, manslaughter. I mean, we recognize that not all murders are the same. In fact, you could kill somebody in self-defense, and then it's not even murder. But for some reason, rape is so sacrosanct that any rape is indistinguishable. If a woman is beaten to within an inch of her life and gang rape in an alley, that's the same thing as being out on a date and the guy doesn't realize, and she says no, or the guy just, she just has too much to drink, and next week she decides she was raped. Maybe she was, but why is it so wrong to differentiate between rapes?
Well, I think it's important that we do that because what you're talking about, Peter, is moral culpability here. And a woman who, say, makes a decision to go to a bar, she makes a decision to drink too much, she's going to have to share some moral responsibility for what might happen. And again, you talk about the fact that it has happened. Women will have consensual sex, they'll change their mind in the morning, and then they want to call that rape. Well, that's not the same thing, and this is what you're talking about, is not the same thing as a woman being forcibly assaulted completely against her will. That's a whole different thing where the moral accountability in that case rests 100% with the one who was making the assault. And I think if we don't make those kind of differentiations, as you point out, we do when it comes to murder, we do with any other number of cases, situations that deal with criminal law. I think we have to do that. All rape is not the same, and we have to be able to make those distinctions in situations where a woman is consensual, she's a consensual partner, she's involved in that, then she's got to bear some of the responsibility for what happens.
But, we reached out to the Romney camp. We tried to get any of their official surrogates. Nobody will touch this topic, yet they want to come out and condemn him, but nobody wants to discuss it. I mean, to me, doesn't this really show some hypocrisy here among people in the Republican Party? I mean, if you're going to be pro-life, then defend your position. Why do they have to hide from it when it comes to this issue? Because clearly everybody who is pro-life, who would make an exception for rape, is going to qualify the type of rape that would qualify for that exception. I mean, you have to. Otherwise, you might as well be pro-choice.
Yeah, and that was my point earlier, that everything that is called rape is not the same. We've got to make those kind of moral distinctions. And, if the Republican Party had gotten on board with Todd Akin, if they defended him right from the beginning, I mean, Public Policy Polling came out with a poll today that's a left-leaning polling outfit, And Todd Akin is still ahead in Missouri after what he said over the weekend. He still leads Claire McCaskill by 1 point. No reason for the Republican Party at this point to throw him overboard. If they would have jumped on board with him, gotten behind him, defended him, supported him, then I think they could lock this race up. Now it's the Republican Party that has basically thrown this seat up for grabs.
Yeah, and I agree with you. They're so afraid of appearing to offend somebody. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a woman, right? But I don't think if I was a woman, I would be offended by what he had to say. Now, particularly once he came back and clarified his words, but you can obviously tell from the context with which he was speaking, he was talking about a violent rape. And just because he called that legitimate doesn't mean he thinks that a date rape is illegitimate.
Sure.
He might have just chosen his words poorly, but from your from your definition, legitimate doesn't imply illegitimate. It just is a more traditional definition of what was known as rape. And if you go back and you get an old dictionary, from 20 years ago, and you look up rape, it's going to be different than the dictionary definition today.
Well, and statutory rape is still rape in my mind, and the penalty ought to be extremely severe. If you have an adult male takes advantage of an impressionable young girl, that's statutory rape. It might be consensual because the girl might agree to it. It's still rape. She's not old enough to give legal consent. I think the penalty ought to be
I
very
even
severe.
think, look, I think that there are circumstances around statutory rape. There's if a guy, it goes with a 13-year-old girl and he knows she's 13 and he's the aggressor, but you can go into a bar and there can be a 16-year-old in that bar with a fake ID who looks like she's 25, and that's still statutory rape. But there are conditions. In fact, you can be an underage boy. You can be a 17-year-old guy having consensual sex with a 16-year-old girl, and that's statutory rape. So obviously there's going to be degrees of statutory rape. So you can't just say that everything is the same just because women's groups want to claim it's all the same to advance some kind of political agenda.
Well, this is one of the few times, Claire McCaskill is arguing that Todd Akin ought to stay in the race. It's one of the few times maybe in my life where I've actually agreed with Senator Claire McCaskill. I think she's exactly right. And again, as you say, and I believe in very severe penalties for forcible rape, for assault rape. Used to be a capital crime in this country. I think maybe it ought to be worth considering that again, just for the deterrent effect. So I believe very importantly that we ought to protect the sexual integrity of all women. I absolutely believe that. They ought to be protected from forcible rape, from assault rape, from drug rape, from statutory rape.
Yeah. But they're not the same. We wouldn't want the same punishment for a guy that took advantage of a woman that had too much to drink in a date versus a violent offender. They're both wrong, but they're not equivalent. Hey, thanks for coming on the show and speaking out. Everybody else, we got another hour coming up on the Peter Schiff Show, so don't miss it.
Gets more reflection, ignore that mess and explore the questions like how you validate yourself. Now you allocate your wealth of years and material spiritually.
The Peter Schiff Show.
Stars you dream to reach, but I don't mean to preach. Adjusted my team and speaking up because it seems that each of us